FM NewsTalk 97.1 Weather Center forecast calls for mainly dry weather through Tuesday, so that's a good thing since major river flooding continues through the first part of next week. For tonight, mainly clear. We drop to 48. Comfortable tomorrow with sunshine, the high 73. Tomorrow night, down to 54, mainly clear. Warmer and more humid Monday, clouds and sun with an afternoon thunderstorm in a few places. High 77. Very warm and humid with some sun Tuesday, high 86. I'm meteorologist Frank Strait for FM NewsTalk 97.1.
Hey St. Louis, Mike Mahan here for Royal Gate Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram. Royal Gate sets the stage with our Memorial Day sales event. Sign and drive a new 2017 Ram Quad Cab 4x4 for $239 a month, 36 months, zero down, taxes included. This model is equipped, not stripped. Visit Royal Gate in Ellisville, Missouri or Columbia, Illinois, just 5 minutes from South County, or online at royalgatedirect.com. See dealer for details. Mention Psych with Mike and get the Royal Package at no charge.
Win a Fun Jet Vacations getaway to beautiful Jamaica with all-inclusive accommodations at Royalton the Grill. Log on to 971talk.com/beach right now and register to win a vacation package for you and a guest with round-trip transportation from St. Louis to Jamaica. The Royalton the Grill masterfully blends the unique Caribbean culture with luxury and top-quality service. Get all the details and register to win at 971talk.com/beach, courtesy of Fun Jet Vacations and Next Radio.
FM NewsTalk 97.1 presents Psych with Mike, with Michael Mahan. Brought to you by Royal Gate Dodge. Royal Gate Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram, with the largest inventory of new Dodge vehicles in St. Louis. Visit them in Ellisville, Missouri or Columbia, Illinois. Online at royalgatedirect.com. This is Psych with Mike.
St. Louis, a little bit after 8 o'clock. This is Psych with Mike. So this has been just a fantastic day, even just so far. I am learning so much from my intrepid producer, Mr. Ladd. You are teaching me a lot of things just as I am in the studio for just a few minutes before the show starts.
I am a wealth of random knowledge.
Well, whether it's random or not,
it's come on. What I just told you and showed you in the past 5 minutes, the very random sets of things that don't go together at all.
Well, it is random, and they don't necessarily go together, but they were all useful to me. So just so everybody knows, Mr. Ladd has shown me we were talking about that Dave always plays Siegel Stop It Now, which is a Star Wars bad lip reading parody, and you showed me something that was set to the Beatles, I Get By With a Little Help From My Friends, which was Princess Leia's Stolen Death Star Plans.
A complete Star Wars Sgt. Pepper's mashup.
It is.
And it's all on video, and the music is spot on. It's really good.
Incredibly well done. And then you told me how to get to Negril much easier than riding the bus from Montego Bay, which is something that I may indeed use in the not-too-distant future. So that's very appreciated.
Glad to help.
So I actually was talking about you yesterday on the DSG, which actually it wasn't the DGS, which actually it wasn't the DGS because Dave was gone, so it was actually the Tony Colombo show yesterday. And I said that I so hope that the Blues win tonight, meaning last night, because if they didn't, I was afraid that you would be in a very poor mood.
No, honestly, no. I would have been disappointed because it would have meant there was no chance for another game to work, but there's a chance for another game to work.
Absolutely. Now
they won. They didn't. They didn't play the best Nashville team. I don't think Nashville played very well, but yeah.
So now that you see that the series is 3-2, do you feel like it's anybody's series to win?
No, I still think it's Nashville series to win.
Do you? Okay.
I still do.
Yeah.
I absolutely. I just think you've got an injury to Alex Steen. You've got a foot injury there. We didn't see the best Nashville performance last night, and the Blues barely beat them.
Mm-hmm. Well, but I haven't felt like we've seen the best Blues performance since they started this series.
I think we've seen a whole lot of the Blues performances from the regular season in this series.
Yeah.
And the fact that their power play is just abysmal is exactly what happened for the majority of the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't see that in the final 15 games or so, but for the rest of the year, what we're seeing here is just barely getting by and not really able to beat a good team.
Right.
That's what we saw most of the year.
Mm-hmm.
The final 20 games or so where the Blues played fantastic and they were playing against very, very poor teams. So it was a little bit of smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
So and you look at it, Nashville, St. Louis, they're relatively even teams. So this is the type of series you get. You don't see one team dominating another. Well, when both teams are playing well, the Blues are not playing well.
Right. So next game is
Tomorrow at 2:00.
tomorrow at 2.
Knockwood, Tuesday
Knockwood.
night
Absolutely.
here at Scott Trade Center.
Yeah, well, I and if the Blues can, take it to a Game 7, that would be phenomenal. And at that point, I don't think that I could feel badly no matter what the outcome.
Absolutely not. No, you come back from being down 3-1 to force a Game 7. Okay,
Yeah, exactly. Right.
good job.
Exactly. Now, then you got to wait a whole nother year, but
Yes,
that's
but
still not
for
disappointing.
people who are Blues fans for 50 years, you're used to waiting a whole nother year.
Absolutely.
It's normal. It's not a surprise. It's what you get for being a Blues fan. They are a cursed organization.
So last week on Psych with Mike, we were talking about communication. Specifically last week, we were talking about communication with a partner or significant other. And I had a bunch of people who got in contact with me this last week to say that they had gone onto the Psych with Mike Facebook page and looked at the quiz and actually figured out what their love language was. Some people were able to get their partners to figure out their love language, and they were able to actually start to have some conversations based on trying to understand each other better. Did you look at that at all?
I looked at it, but this past week with getting the house ready for sale
Right.
and work
Yeah,
and
yeah.
everything else, there's been no time to really sit down and
Sure.
answer some questions, unfortunately.
Now,
But that's a book that Katie has.
oh, okay.
The
Good.
Love Languages book.
Yeah, so you
she's
were already
read it.
familiar with it.
I was obviously familiar with it,
Yeah.
yes. Because
So-
I listen to my wife.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Good man. So, has she ever tried to have you be more invested in the process of understanding your love language or her love language?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Although, as she's reading the book, I'm assuming that will be the end result.
Oh, I'm guessing that you're probably going to hear more about it. Absolutely.
exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So, if anybody has any questions, if you have any comments, you can always get me at Psych with Mike on Twitter, at Psych with Mike on Facebook. My website is michaelmahan.org, MichaelMahon.org. And as always, I want to promote, if you like Psych with Mike, tell a couple of your friends to podcast the show, because I'm really interested in seeing those podcast numbers go up. That is the way that I kind of have the ability to judge the success of the show. So if you like it and you think it could be helpful for somebody else, then please encourage them to go to either the FM NewsTalk 97.1 Facebook page or website, and you can get Psych with Mike there, or off of my website, michaelmahan.org. So tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about communication, but instead of with a significant other, we're going to talk about communication with an adolescent child. And on the Facebook page and on my Twitter account, I had posted today a couple of things. So I've got on there communication with a teen, an article about that, and then an article about active listening, and then 5 facts about the teenage brain. And we're going to go through some of that information here tonight. But again, if you have any questions, you can get me on either my website or on Twitter or through the Psych with Mike Facebook page. So the first thing that I think is really important when we are talking about adolescence is understanding how the brain or how the adolescent is developing both biologically in their brain, but also socio-emotionally, because the way that adolescents develop or the stage of adolescence is kind of unique. And the reason for that is that prior to the early 1900s, prior to the Industrial Revolution, most people don't know this, but there was no recognized stage of adolescence. So the first time that the word adolescent was used to describe humans in a specific stage of development was 1904. So prior to that, there was no stage of adolescence because prior to the Industrial Revolution, when you got to the age of being able to reproduce, what did you do? You moved out of your parents' home. So you physically distanced yourself from your family of origin because you went out and started an independent life outside of their home. After the Industrial Revolution, that started to change, and the reason was because we started to make laws that said that adolescents can't work in sweatshops for 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, get paid 3 cents, and in dangerous conditions. So we started making protective laws so that individuals were not able to do that, and specifically laws that applied to adolescents. So what that meant is that now adolescents were forbidden from going out and being able to make a living to be able to be financially independent. So they were staying in their parents' homes more often and for a longer period of time. And what happened was that then we started to build schools called high schools, secondary schools, to be able to educate these individuals for the skills that were required in an industrial society. So prior to the Industrial Revolution, most people, if they finished school, finished 6th grade, and then went out and started some form of work, or if they were very wealthy, their families sent them to finishing schools and they eventually went to college. But there was no designated high school. After the Industrial Revolution, there was high school, but we didn't allow these individuals to work, so they were going to school for longer periods of time. They were in their parents' home for longer periods of time. They were physically, financially, socially dependent on their family of origin for longer periods of time. But everything inside of them biologically was saying, I should be an adult because I can reproduce. And prior to this, I've always been recognized as an adult at that stage of my development. So adolescence became a socially constructed period of development that tried to resolve the conflict between the biology of the individual, which is telling you at a molecular level, I should be an adult because I can reproduce, and the sociological phenomenon of not allowing adolescents to go out and work. So this causes, again, this conflict, which is called cognitive dissonance, builds up. And the period developmentally of adolescence in our society now primarily has become a period where individuals are responsible to resolve issues of identity. So who am I? What am I going to do in the future? How am I going to be able to take care of myself? Those are the questions that now we are resolving rather than just going out and figuring it out on the fly, which is what people tended to do prior to the Industrial Revolution. But as a result of that, we have created for ourselves a new developmental period in human development that didn't exist prior to the Industrial Revolution. And so people have looked at that pretty significantly. So Piaget specifically talked about the idea of cognitive development. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. But the first thing that I want to do is just talk a little bit about what's going on in the brain of an adolescent that is causing them to either have difficulty communicating with you as a parent or have you as a parent be able to communicate with them. So we've talked a little bit about brain function and structure in the past. And again, I don't want to try and talk over people's heads. If you have questions, you can always contact me about that. But I do think that it's important for people to understand. So I'm going to try and walk through this a little bit, and hopefully it won't be too off in the weeds. And again, if you have questions, you can always contact me. But, you can always also use Al Gore's fantastic gift to mankind called the internets to find out more information about these things. But in the human brain, during this period, as soon as you start to go through the biological stage of puberty, where you start to have the ability to sexually reproduce, your brain starts to actually change. And this is because prior to this, your body was not producing a lot of the hormones that are associated with sexual maturity. And that actually changes your brain at a physiological or molecular level. And a couple of things that it does is, number one, it prompts the brain, it signals the brain to really complete the myelination of what's called the frontal cortex. So the frontal cortex is the area of the brain that is just behind your forehead. And it is the area that operates to give you the ability to make good, sound judgments, to delay gratification of needs. These are called executive functions. So the ability to focus your attention and to do things intentionally and to think logically are operated in that frontal cortex. And this area of the brain starts to maturate and become completely maturated by the age of young adulthood. But during this period of time, because this area of the brain is working rapidly to maturate, people feel like they have the ability to think logically. And to a certain extent, they do. They think much more logically. You probably have seen this. If you've ever known an adolescent, you probably have witnessed this phenomenon. They think more logically, obviously, than young children or even older children do. Now, for an adolescent, what ends up happening is that you become convinced in your own infallibility, because this newfound ability to think logically convinces you that you have this ability to think logically and you are infallible. Now, at the same time, what is happening is that there's another area of the brain called the amygdala, which is the area of the brain that controls emotional reactions. And this area of the brain is also developing rapidly. And so what happens is that your brain is like a computer. It can do two things quickly. It can't do two things simultaneously, but it's always going to do the most basic function first. And so emotional reactions are a much more basic function of the human brain than rational thought is. So a person can't engage in having an intense emotional response and engage in rational thought simultaneously. You just can't do that. And so the emotional response is always going to win. And so for adolescents, they have both of these processes going on simultaneously. There's a part of their brain that's telling them that they have rational thought and that they are infallible, but then there's also a more basic structure in the brain that is overriding that ability to think rationally and causing them to have very, very intense emotional reactions that then supersede this ability to think rationally. So when you get into conversations with your adolescent, they believe that they are infallible, but you can see in them that they are very emotional. But if you say to them, you are emotional and your emotionality is superseding or overriding your rational thinking, they aren't going to believe you. Because again, they become convinced in the infallibility of their logical thinking. And so both of these things happening at the same time are coming into conflict with each other, but they're also making it much more difficult for individuals, for parents to be able to communicate with them in an effective way. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the socio-emotional development of adolescents, and eventually we're going to get into how parents can actually then communicate with their adolescents effectively and efficiently. So join us on the other side of the break. Be right back.
Talk lines are open now, 314-969-9797 or toll free 866-455-9797. This is Psych with Mike.
Dependable weather.
Clouds take control today. Chance of a couple of spotty
With
little...
Fox 2 meteorologist Dave Murray.
Brought to you by Air Comfort Service. Save up to $2,225 in rebates, plus 0% financing for 60 months on a new system. Visit aircomfortservice.com.
Hey, St. Louis. Mike Mahan here for Royal Gate Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram. Royal Gate sets the stage with our Memorial Day sales event. Sign and drive a new 2017 Ram Quad Cab 4x4 for $239 a month, 36 months, 0 down, taxes included. This model is equipped, not stripped. Visit Royal Gate in Ellisville, Missouri or Columbia, Illinois, just 5 minutes from South County, or online at royalgatedirect.com. See dealer for details. Mention Psych with Mike and get the Royal package at no charge.
Do you hear that sound? If you're a DirecTV customer, you know what that means. April showers bring TV outages. It's time to do some spring cleaning and get rid of that dish and switch to Spectrum. Spectrum is more HD than satellite, and you can expect to see your crystal clear picture even during bad weather. Switch to Spectrum. Just call 844-855-2999. Spectrum Internet has the fastest starting speeds available for the price at 100 megabits per second with no data caps. That's enough speed to power all of your devices. Oh, and it's 15 times faster than that 6 megabits per second AT&T Internet service DirecTV tries to pair you up with. Call 844-855-2999 and get Spectrum TV, Internet, and voice services for only $29.99 a month each when bundled. Start enjoying entertainment on your terms. Call 844-855-2999. Spectrum. Contract-free, risk-free, hassle-free. Restrictions apply. Call for details.
This is House Call for Health. Do you live near a busy road or highway? Turns out your neighbors who tuck themselves away in the backwoods may be prone to a longer drive to work, but they're also packing more health benefits in their real estate punch than you are. According to Canadian researchers, people who live near heavy traffic hotspots face a higher risk of developing dementia than those who live further away. The Lancet published study found that people who lived within 50 meters of high traffic roads had a 7% higher chance of developing dementia compared to those who lived more than 300 meters away from busy roads. They say the air pollutants can get into the bloodstream and lead to inflammation, which is linked to cardiovascular disease and possibly other conditions like diabetes. The study also concluded that air pollutants can get into the brain via the bloodstream and cause neurological problems down the road. For more on this story, check foxnewshealth.com. House Call for Health, I'm Alex Hine, Fox News.
Hey everybody, Rachel Ray here. Nothing brings a bigger smile to my face than cooking up a big meal for the whole family and lots of friends. But there's not enough room at my table for the 17 million kids in our country who struggle with hunger. That's why the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks collects surplus food to give hope to hungry kids. But they can't do it without your help. Support Feeding America and your local food bank at feedingamerica.org.
A message from Feeding America and the Ad Council.
The Maryland Heights Police Officers Association and FM NewsTalk 97.1 are teaming up to host a charity golf tournament with all the proceeds going to the Rankin Jordan Pediatric Bridge Hospital. Play around for the kids on Monday, June 5th at the Golf Club of Florissant and help children in need. Team registrations include food and drink with an awards dinner following the tournament. If you'd like to help out but you can't make it, donations are accepted. Visit 971talk.com to sign up for your foursome and to help the Rankin Jordan Pediatric Bridge Hospital.
Talk lines are open now, 314-969-9797 or toll free 866-455-9797. Now, more Psych with Mike on FM NewsTalk 97.1.
Welcome back into the Royal Gate Dodge studios. This is Psych with Mike. We're going to get back to our conversation in just a second, but I wanted to let everybody know, Frank and I, in the break, we're talking about the commercial that you heard about living next to a highway and that causing some potential for the development of dementia. But what is much more likely is that you will develop dementia as a result of poor sleep quality because of the inability for the brain to get exposed to cerebrospinal fluid. And so having good sleep is one of the best things that a person can do to have a healthy brain for as long as is naturally possible. But the one thing that I wanted to say to Frank as we came back on Mike is that one of the things that is really, really good for that, for making sure that your sleep patterns are good and are regular, is being exposed to sunlight early in the morning, having sunlight on your retina specifically. That actually signals the brain to metabolize vitamin E, which is important for the production of melatonin, which is a precursor to serotonin, which controls your sleep cycles. So if you don't have good access to a light source early in the morning when you first get up, they sell light boxes, which people can use to supplement that. And that's a really, really good way to get your brain back into a good, appropriate, healthy circadian cycle. So we're going to get back now talking about this idea of communication with adolescents. Before the break, where we were talking about the actual brain development. And now in this segment, I want to talk a little bit about the socio-emotional development. And this is based on the work of Jean Piaget, who came up with what is considered in developmental psychology the best explanation for how we develop socio-emotionally or psychologically, but cognitively, that's the word I'm looking for. Now, a lot of people have sometimes had some questions or criticisms of Piaget's work. And while a lot of those criticisms may be true, and I don't want to go into an in-depth conversation about the criticisms of Piaget, but still he is recognized as the preeminent theoretician, and I'm not sure if that's a word, but it is now because I just used it, theoretician of cognitive development in the human developmental cycle. So what Piaget said is that adolescence is a unique time in that there is a resurgence and a return to an egocentric mindset or way of thinking. So that isn't a negative word. A lot of people think that if you are egocentric, that means you're conceited. That is not the clinical definition of egocentrism. So the clinical definition of egocentrism is the inability to understand that other people have ideas, frames of reference, needs, wants, and desires that are different from yours. So babies are completely 100% egocentric. They have no capacity to understand the thought processes of people outside of them. And that's why a baby will cry in the middle of the night and not worry about who in the world or in the house that he or she wakes up, because they don't have the ability to do that. They don't have the ability to think, oh, I should be quiet because it's rude to wake anybody else up. That's egocentrism. That's the greatest, most pure form of egocentrism. What Piaget said is that when we get into adolescence, though, we have a return to egocentric thinking, meaning that when an adolescent starts to go through the cognitive developmental process that they need to go through during adolescence, their brain becomes hyper-focused in a very specific way, specifically focused on what is important socially to acceptance of the individual by the peer group. So the egocentric thinking that happens during adolescence is very much focused on identification with the peer group. And unlike infant egocentrism, it has two very unique components associated with it called the personal fable and the myth of the perceived audience. So what that means is that during adolescence, individuals who are going through this process of egocentrism think that everybody in the world cares about what they say and do. So you can't convince an adolescent that nobody cares whether or not they have a blemish on their face, that the rest of the world is far too busy with their own problems and troubles to actually, number one, notice if you have a blemish on your face. Number two, actually think enough about it to actually develop a conclusion that that's a negative thing. Now, the adolescent will say, oh my gosh, no, I can't possibly go to school with a blemish on my face. Everybody will know and everyone will make fun of me. So they catastrophize this awareness because they believe that this is the most horrible thing in the world, that everybody will know, and that because everybody will know, that those people will judge them and judge them harshly. Now, the reason why I feel like this is so important, especially in today's environment, is that this is the explanation for why social media works. Social media works because of this concept of perceived audience and the fact that people are concerned with how others view them. So the idea that you can, and I'm going to get this wrong, is it Snapchat and Instagram? So these are things, these are applications that you can put on your phone where you can take a picture of your food, right, and then send it out on the internets.
Exactly.
Yeah. So my daughter does this, and if you're listening, Pumpkin, then hopefully this is not going to be embarrassing, but she does this, and I am amazed that she does this because I can't imagine that there are more than 2 or 3 people who even see that. And if they do see that, I would be surprised if anybody looked at that and said, wow, here, instantly send me a message of where you are because that looks so delicious that I now have to drive there and get some myself. Right? So most people are not going to care that you go to Einstein's and get a bagel. Is Einstein's even still open? Yes. Okay. So Einstein's, get a bagel and put some cream cheese on it in the morning. But because we believe this, we engage in these behaviors, and these behaviors are remnants of our development during adolescence. So what that means is that if you are 32 years old, and I don't mean to be offensive in any way, and you are engaging in a process where you are very concerned about what other people think of you on social media, you are displaying behavior that is reminiscent of adolescent egocentrism. So this, when prior to the availability of the internet or electronic devices, you would go through this process of egocentrism, this period of egocentrism, and by the end of adolescence, it would be over because there was nothing to sustain it. Now we have the means to sustain this process of adolescent egocentrism well into adulthood. So that first unique aspect of adolescent egocentrism is the perceived audience. The second is the personal fable. And this is defined by the adolescent who just can't understand that there are negative consequences associated with risk-taking behavior. So adolescents will drink excessively. They will engage in unprotected sex routinely. They will do all kinds of things that most people would look at and say, whoa, that's really risky. You probably shouldn't do that. Drive your car far too fast. So, insurance companies are really, really good at building these things called actuary tables, where they can tell you very specifically and very closely to reality the statistical probability of any single thing happening in the world. So an adolescent, somebody who is 17 years old, has far better reaction times than I do. That's just the truth. So at 52, my reaction times are much less good than an individual who is 17 years old. And yet my insurance rates are 1/10 of an individual who is 17. Now, that's not based on their physiological ability to drive. Physiologically, they are much better at driving, or much more potentially capable at driving than I am, but they lack experience and they lack sound judgment. And so the actuary tables say that if you're going to be involved in a car accident, the most probable period of time that you are going to be involved in that car accident is within 24 months of receiving your driver's license. And within that 24 months, the average individual is going to be involved in 3 car accidents. So the reason that is because of this idea of the personal fable. They will engage in risk-taking behavior like driving recklessly or far too fast because they have no ability to perceive the consequences. So parents will a lot of times say to their adolescent children, you need to think about the consequences of what you're doing, and you need to do that before you engage in the behavior. That's a great idea. And if your adolescent can do that, then that's fantastic. But developmentally, adolescents are very, very poor at being able to look forward into the future and be able to identify consequences and then base their judgment of their own behavior on those perceived consequences. So there's some things going on during adolescence that make it difficult for them to have a frame of reference that is similar or even close to that of the parent. But the parent oftentimes engages in behavior or conversations assuming that the child's frame of reference is the same as their own. Okay, we got to go to our second break. We'll be back in just a few minutes. We'll pick this up on the other side. If you want to tweet me, at Psych with Mike on Twitter or at Psych with Mike on Facebook. Be right back.
And instead of saying all of your goodbye,
follow Mike on Twitter at Psych with Mike.
Realize that life goes fast. It's hard to make the good things last. You realize the sun doesn't go down.
This is Psych with Mike.
By the world.
Hey guys, Glover here. I have your last chance to win tickets to DGS VIP happening this Thursday at the Playhouse at Westport Plaza. Comedy, music, nudity. Listen to the show or go to 971talk.com to win tickets to my sold-out show.
Hey St. Louis, Mike Mahan here for Royal Gate Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram. Royal Gate sets the stage with our Memorial Day sales event. Sign and drive a new 2017 Dodge Charger for $239 a month, 36 months. 0 down, taxes included. Drive the car with race car-inspired DNA. Visit Royal Gate in Ellisville, Missouri, or Columbia, Illinois, just 5 minutes from South County, or online at royalgatedirect.com. See dealer for details. Mention Psych with Mike and get the Royal Package at no charge.
The Financial Symphony is a show that blends the worlds of music and finance together in one harmonious package. It features your local financial maestro, Jerry Means.
A lot of advisors out there are mainly giving accumulation advice or looking at the growth through your working years. You really need to take a look at, is your advisor giving you advice on preservation and distribution?
That's the Financial Symphony with Jerry Means, Sunday mornings at 9 on FM News Talk 97.1.
If you've been contacted by the IRS or Missouri Department of Revenue for an audit or a past due tax debt, you may need the services of a tax attorney that can resolve your tax issues. Hi, I'm Lance Drury, a local tax attorney with over 30 years of experience, and I've helped hundreds resolve their IRS issues. Contact me at the law firm of Lance Drury right here in St. Louis. Your first visit is free and confidential, and we'll meet in person and work on a strategy to protect you and ensure a fair compromise. I know your rights, I know the law, and I get results. So if you've missed tax filings or if you've been accused of tax evasion, tax fraud, facing IRS, wage levies, bank levies, or tax liens, act now. Call me, tax resolution attorney Lance Drury, at 314-238-7360, or go to Lance, DRURYlaw.com. That's Lance, DRURYlaw.com.
The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertisements.
Hey, this is Reba McEntire, and I wanted to talk to you about a serious problem right here in our own backyard. Did you know that there are nearly 16 million kids struggling with hunger in America? That's why the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks collects surplus food, engaging their communities in solving hunger and giving hope to hungry kids and their families. But they need your help. Support Feeding America and your local food bank at feedingamerica.org.
A message from Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Chattanooga.
Terrorist attack.
Fort Hood.
References to Allah.
Pulse nightclub in Orlando.
It's going to happen again.
We don't have to let you into this country.
Sean Hannity.
Weeknights 7 to 9.
Wake the hell up.
On FM News Talk 97.1.
Do you
Talk lines are open now. 314-969-9797 or toll free 866-455-9797. Now, more Psych with Mike on FM News Talk 97.1.
So I think I've told you before, welcome back into the Royal Gate Dodge Studios. This is Psych with Mike, that all of the bumper music is because I give everybody a song, and so these are songs from my family. And Do You Realize is my daughter's song. So I was just listening to that and thinking about her, and was getting a little verklempt, I'm not going to lie. So, she is 21, just turned 21. Oh, wow. Yeah. So turned 21 on the 19th of April. So that is a big change in my life. Actually, it's probably not a big change realistically, but somehow cognitively it felt like that the world shifted that day. So I am talking about this topic of communicating with adolescents from experience. I raised 2 children, and they are both adults now. So I am now beyond this process of communicating with adolescents. But I do remember what it was like, and I do talk to people about this all of the time. And one of the things that is really frustrating to me is when a parent comes into my office and says, you know, the thing is, I just really want to be my child's best friend. That is a mistaken idea. It is a potentially dangerous idea for both you and your child. And the reason is because the parent's job is to create boundaries. So for children and adolescents specifically, creation of boundaries is what gives the individual security. Individuals who don't have boundaries, who don't know where the limits of their behavior are supposed to be, are very insecure individuals. And so that is what we as parents are supposed to be able to convey to our adolescents. And you probably don't do a lot of that in your relationships with your friends. You probably don't go around telling your friends where the boundaries of their behavior are. If you do, number one, I would try and posit to you that you actually have a parent-child relationship with that individual. And number two, you probably don't have a whole lot of friends because probably friends don't really like that. And the other thing that makes that potentially dangerous or potentially unrealistic is that people are usually friends with other individuals who are about as emotionally well-developed as they are. So think about it. You probably aren't friends with people who are significantly less mature than you. you might be friends with people that you've matured beyond, and you may still talk to those individuals, but it's probably pretty frustrating for you to try and be in that relationship. Most of us feel comfortable in relationships with other individuals who are about as emotionally mature as we are. So if you are saying to me that you want to be best friends with your adolescent child, what you are saying to me is that either you think that your adolescent is about as emotionally mature as you, or that you are about as emotionally mature as your adolescent. And neither one of those things is a good thing. So it's better for us as parents to recognize what our job is, and that our job is to limit a child's behavior and to be able to say no to them or for them when they are incapable of saying no for themselves. So parenting in our society now has become a real challenge. And not that it hasn't been in the past, but most parents that I talk to and I see, the reason why parenting is difficult is because they are struggling being able to actually live up to consistently the challenge of being able to limit their child's behavior. And the reason is this: adolescents are really good at manipulation. I hope that I'm not breaking any confidence there or telling anybody anything that they don't already know. And an adolescent is going to engage a parent in an argument long enough to get the parent to act poorly, because when the parent messes up, the child now cognitively can justify their behavior by telling themselves, see, you're not a good parent, therefore I don't have to respect you as an authority figure. So being a parent to an adolescent and having good communication with them is all about staying out of the manipulation, not getting locked into having that manipulation effectively operate on us in a way that causes us to be defensive. So a defensive individual is always somebody that is going to be taken less credibly. You cannot be credible when you're on the defensive. So when a parent goes to their adolescent child and says, hey, why didn't you clean up your room? And the child says, well, you don't clean up your room. Then the parent hears that and says, oh, okay, inside the parent's brain, this causes a conflict because the parent approached the child in what they believe to be a realistic, logical manner, and what they got back was defensiveness. And so you now don't see that individual as credible, but it also causes you to have to reevaluate the way that you are communicating. And most of us respond to defensiveness in kind. So when someone is defensive towards us, we respond defensively. So when we say to our child, why didn't you clean your room? And then the child says, well, you didn't clean your room. Then you say, wait a minute, it's not your job to judge whether or not I clean my room. Now you are being defensive. And once that happens, now you have reduced your credibility in the eyes of the child, and they now feel justified in their original behavior because they don't have to see you as a respected authority figure. So the first thing that I always encourage parents to do when you are communicating with an adolescent is to recognize that they are going to stay in an argument just long enough to try and elicit negative behavior from you so that they can see you as not credible. So what I would encourage the parent to do is to go into that situation, say, hey, how come you didn't clean up your room? And when the child says, well, you didn't clean up your room, you say to them, okay, I can understand how it is really frustrating to you that I don't do the things that I ask you to do as well or efficiently as you might think I should, but that really isn't an answer to the original question about why you didn't clean your room. So what you want to do is you want to continue to be very, very appropriate and logical with them and not get drawn down into the realm of talking to them or reacting to them from a position of defensiveness, because that undermines your credibility. Now, that is oftentimes very difficult because adolescents know how to push our buttons, just like anybody else that lives in a connected, committed relationship with another human being is going to be able to do. So it's hard to be able to try and stay out of that. But the more that you can communicate with your adolescent without getting drawn down into the trap of responding to them defensively, the more effective and efficient that communication is going to be. And the way in which one of the most effective ways to do that is through a process called active listening. So active listening is a process of actually paying attention to someone. So what I tell people is this, that when I was raising children, when my kids were adolescents, we still had a football team. And I hope that I'm not hurting anybody's feelings or bringing up bad memories, but I was really into football, and so I would watch football a lot. And when I am watching football and another human being walks into the room and says, "Hey, Mike, can I talk to you?" I can hear them. And I can say, "Yes, you may talk to me." And they can then start to share information with me, which I can superficially respond to while I'm watching the football game. That is passive hearing. Active listening is when you say, "Okay, yes, you can talk to me. Hang on just a second." And you actually pause the game and you turn to that individual and you actually concentrate and focus your attention on them. So that's the difference between active and passive listening. And so there are some things that you do when you are listening actively that are different than things that you do when you are listening passively. So when you are listening actively, there's some nonverbal things that you do. You smile at the other person. And remember, we've talked in the past about pro-social behaviors and how oxytocin is this hormone in the human body that actually creates or encourages pro-social behavior. So when you smile, your levels of oxytocin are going to go up, and then the other person is likely going to mirror that behavior, because human beings generally mirror each other in normal, casual conversation. So that person's going to smile. Their oxytocin levels are going to go up. The cortisol levels are going to go down. And now people are going to be primed for actually having a realistic, logical, productive conversation. So smiling is a really great thing to do. Eye contact is an important thing for human beings to feel like that they are being listened to intently. And posture is important. So if you are, slumped over your computer or electronic device and someone is trying to talk to you, then the impression that they are getting is that you are not paying attention to them. Even if you think that you are, the impression that they are getting is that you are not. So posture is a big signal, a big nonverbal signal as to whether or not you are paying attention to someone. And even if you feel like that you can pay attention slumped over an electronic device, actually looking at the other person is going to convey your attention much more efficiently to them and make them feel better about the interaction. And then mirroring, we talked about that, like you smile, they smile. When they are getting ramped up, you are probably going to get ramped up. So one of the things that I tell people is when I was working in the treatment center, and I still do this even now in my practice, the more excited that a person would get, the more louder that they would get, the quieter I would get. So it's really, really hard for a person to be screaming at you if you're talking real quietly to them. And so one of the things that you can do with your adolescent is as they start to ramp up, if you also ramp up, then they're going to continue to escalate. What you want to do is you want to try and take that conversation down. And the way that you do that is that you start speaking quieter and slower and more monotone, and then they will start to de-escalate. Now, these nonverbal things you can practice and you can get good at, and then you could do these things without actually paying attention. So the verbal things are a little bit different. So remembering, questioning, reflection, summarization, all of these things are wrapped up in the story I told last week about the woman and the man who, she said, "Oh, I'm afraid to drive home in the snow." And after about 20 minutes, the guy said to her, "Oh, you're afraid to drive home in the snow." And she started crying because it was the first time that he had ever actually heard her in a way that she knew was real. And so that's the kind of stuff that is verbal, and you can't fake that. And so that's what you want to do with your adolescent, is to do things with them and reflect back to them this idea that you are actually paying attention to them, that they are important people. It doesn't matter what they're saying, right? So your adolescent may be saying something that for you seems to be completely ridiculous, and you are completely taken aback that they would even say these things. It's okay. It doesn't matter. Paying attention to them and listening to them in a way that makes them feel heard is important. All right, we've gotten to the end of another Psych with Mike. Sometimes I think we should do 2 hours. So get me on Facebook at Psych with Mike. Follow me on Twitter at Psych with Mike. If you like the show, tell a couple of friends to podcast. We're going to be back next week. We're going to continue this idea of communication. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. We might revisit some of this adolescent stuff, but we're also going to talk about communication with friends and with the rest of society, the peer group or interactions like that. All right? So we will be back next week. Hope you guys have a great week. See you next week.
Attention business owners. Are you struggling while waiting for your customers to pay in their net 30s, 60s, or 90s? Can't get a business loan because you have no equity, bad credit, or no credit at all? Then you need to call AmeriFactors. Get cash right now for your invoices instead of getting turned down by the banks or taking out a high-interest business loan. There is nothing to pay back. We simply buy your accounts receivable, and if those clients don't pay on those invoices, we take the loss. You have already been paid. We don't give you funds based on your credit. We give you funds based on your accounts receivable. Go buy that new equipment, hire those new employees, or use the working funds to bid on jobs you never thought you could go after. With AmeriFactors, there is no more waiting for your customers to pay. We give you the working funds while we wait for the net 30s, 60s, and 90s. Fund your business today with AmeriFactors by calling 800-336-6468. That's 800-336-6468. Or text FACTOR to 41411. That's FACTOR to 41411. And simply click the link to call and get funds within 48 hours.
Hey, St. Louis. Mike Mahan here for Royal Gate Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram. Royal Gate sets the stage with our Memorial Day sales event. Sign and drive a new 2017 Dodge Charger for $239 a month, 36 months. 0 down, taxes included. Drive the car with race car-inspired DNA. Visit Royal Gate in Ellisville, Missouri, or Columbia, Illinois, just 5 minutes from South County, or online at royalgatedirect.com. See dealer for details. Mention Psych with Mike and get the Royal package at no charge.
Whoa. The moment my son saw a redwood tree.
It's huge!
Is the moment I knew that for him,
You can't even see the top of that thing.
even the sky has no limit.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org. Learn about forests near you and discover cool things to do when you go. Your moment is out there. Find it at discovertheforest.org.
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service.
KFTK FM Florissant, KFTK AM East St. Louis, K254CR St. Louis. Powered by Window World. FM News Talk 97.1.
Fox News Radio, I'm Kathleen Maloney. Former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn reportedly ignored repeated warnings from President Trump's transition officials about communicating with Russia's ambassador.
Current and former government officials told the AP that Flynn was also warned that the ambassador, Sergei Kislyak, was almost certainly under surveillance by the FBI and the CIA because of his ties to Russia's intelligence agencies. One transition official was so concerned that he asked the Obama White House for a copy of the CIA's classified profile on Russia's ambassador for Flynn to look through before going through with the meeting. Ultimately, Flynn and Kislyak did meet and had a number of subsequent conversations as well, including at least one which was picked up by U.S. intelligence agencies.
Fox's Garrett Tenney. Former Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates will testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee Monday about Flynn's contacts with Russia. As voters in France prepare to choose a new president, hackers have struck the campaign of the leading candidate.
Thousands of emails and documents have been seized from the computers of campaign staffers of Emmanuel Macron. They were posted online. While most of the material, well, it's kind of mundane, but it also is combined, according to authorities today, with fake news items meant to try to sway the election.
Fox's Greg Palcott in Paris. France's cybersecurity agency says it will investigate the hack. Evacuations in Georgia